Thank you for joining us. We'll be broadcasting in about 5 minutes. So welcome today. Thank you for joining us. We're super excited about our topics today about the recovery phase in our people strategy processes. So thank you for joining us today.
That's right. And here I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation. And so that's up now. And so, yeah, we have some people coming in.
Oh, look, Brian's on. Good morning, Brian.
That Brian is, and just for those that are out there, Brian's going to be joining us as a speaker here in the future. So it'd be great to have him.
Great.
We're really looking forward to what he has to say.
Yeah, we have some amazing speakers, not only today with Lorna Carlson and Lisa and Sam, but we have some amazing speakers coming up in the next couple of months. So we're super excited to get those planned in this time of evolving and thriving during our recovery phase.
Yeah.
So it's really neat, and just a lot to talk about. A lot of news coming out, and as companies are getting back to work and so forth. So it's kind of an interesting time to see how this all plays out. But
yes, yeah, it's is it the holiday weekend? We're going into
yeah, coming into Memorial Day.
And Lorna, you're a veteran.
I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lorna.
We acknowledge you and all the veterans that are going into the next week. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was my true pleasure.
Now, if I could just get my barbecue to work. Just bought it a couple of years ago. It's not working real well.
Yeah, I plan on going up to Carpenter's Peak, doing a hike there on Monday.
Oh, that's nice.
Roxborough State Park.
It's so beautiful up there.
Yes, it is. And it's close.
Where do you live, Lorna?
I live in Aurora.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's fairly close. I've been to that on that hike several times, so I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good to get out and stretch the legs. I got my kids have been cooped up in the house for way too long, so we're gonna go camping this weekend too.
Oh, fun!
Wonderful.
There's going to be a lot of folks up in the mountains this weekend.
Oh yeah, there has been. I mean, just doing social distancing is a challenge in the outdoors nowadays. So
yeah,
I know.
Yeah, you saw the Boulder Creek. Everybody's at the Boulder Creek crowding in right now already. So I think we're about less than a minute here to get started. And we'll start at the top of the hour.
Sounds good.
So welcome everyone. We're looking forward to get started today at our People Strategy Forum. We'll start here in a few seconds. Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion on People Strategy Forum. And in time of recovery, we'd like to think of this as our time of recovery, and we have leading experts, people experts, that discusses the recovery phase of COVID-19. So thank you so much. My name is Shar Miller, and I'm a talent management consultant and people strategist with CompTeam. I also am a owner of a company called Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, and I also provide career coaching, HR with a Heart. So I'm pleased to be co-sponsoring with my team here today. Sam Reeve is the CEO and founder of CompTeam, and he has been awesome at helping us get these people forums started and moving. Also, I'm very proud to have Lisa Jackson with us today. She's a keynote speaker and a change expert with Corporate Culture Pros. And so thank you so much for joining us. And we have an awesome guest speaker today, which I'll introduce in a second. But this really is about our strategies around people culture during these times of change and transition. And so we are here to support you 100% during the way. So I'd like to introduce today of our guest speaker, who's awesome. Her name is Lorna Carlson. And just so you know, her bio here will be posted on our compteam.net website. And she is just phenomenal. I've known her for several years. And she will be speaking with us today about the re-recruiting of your talent during time of epidemic recovery. So just to get started before we get into the agenda, first of all, I just want to get into the housekeeping aspects. First of all, this presentation will be on demand after this session. It will be recorded. We will have some attachments and helpful resources, including the hard copy of today's presentation located at compteam.net. Also, you'll see information regarding our next session because we do these sessions every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So wherever you're at in the country, we'd love to have you involved. And also, Sam Reeve here will be sending you registration links at the end of the call today. So we'd love to have you come to our future sessions. And then also during today's discussion, we'd like you to please participate in the chat or the Q&A. We want this to be a very interactive dialogue, and we'd love your information and feedback, and we'll definitely be sharing that throughout today's session. And then we also ask that you share these forums in your social networks. LinkedIn, Facebook, you'll notice we have a big presence on those. And it's also a great way to network with other professionals, business leaders, HR professionals in this time of people strategy. So today I'm going to talk about the agenda. So starting off with Sam, Reeve, and myself will be discussing the coaching and the workforce success and the recovery. And then Lisa and Sam will discuss leading disruptive change from chaos to growth, which is so vital right now. Let's be positive about the growth. And then also Lorna and I will talk about re-recruiting your talent during this time of recovery. And then again, we'll have an open dialogue, robust dialogue, and we really appreciate your interaction with that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sam here, and we'll start off with coaching in the workforce. Hi, Sam.
Hi. Yeah, so really excited to talk to everybody today. I mean, there are a lot of things that are going on in the workforce and what companies are doing. And right now, we're in a week in or a couple weeks in some places as far as some businesses reopening and trying to bring some employees back on a limited basis and so forth. But one thing that was interesting to see is just how many people are preferring to remain in that remote as a part of that remote environment. And so these statistics here is a combination between the Grossman Group and the Gallup surveys. But in April, we saw that there was about 60% of the workforce saying, "Hey, this is great. We want to stay remote." And then that started to erode a little bit in the May timeframe. The Gallup survey was on the April, and the Grossman survey was in May. Of course, these are two different sample groups, but we saw that deteriorate a little bit to about half the workforce still would like to be remote following this. Now, a lot of things have been coming out in the news. I mean, we've heard that Twitter mentioned that they're going to be remote forever as far as to their employees. And then they were quickly followed by Square. Square came out and had the same comment. Now, Google and Facebook are also saying that they're going to allow employees to work remotely for the remainder of the year, and they're going to bring people back selectively. But the next thing is that Wired magazine came out with this, the cubicle is back. And I really don't think this is a reality. I mean, we're going back into a cubicle world. I mean, we tried that. It wasn't very effective. And I'm not sure if that is going to be something that is going to, really come back. Now, I've heard that some companies are thinking about bringing a cubicle-like environment and having more of an open seating, but using the plexiglass type of situation where they're keeping people apart and so forth, and trying that out. But that might be something that is more prevalent than just going back into the cubicle. But we'll see where that goes. I really don't think that this is going to be desired by a lot of employees. Now,
I'm extremely surprised that, just interject here, that people are feeling that they don't want to work in the remote environment, or at least that's reducing. And I'm surprised because a lot of employees that work in the cubicle environment, you'd think that they'd be relieved that they don't have to be sitting in a cubicle.
Yeah. Well, I think I think there's very few people that really enjoyed that kind of cubicle experience, but there are some things that are challenging for the remote workforce that are doing. I mean, as far as team cohesion has been noted, making sure that you really have a good cultural grasp. Different types of collaboration is an issue. Employees are worried about being seen. They want to be seen by their managers and to be looked as a impactful person. And so it's hard to do that in a remote environment. And we have to think about new ways of doing that. Other businesses are concerned about just, some of the customer impact. Some customers prefer to see and work with individuals. If we think about, several years ago, and just when we did the shift to online banking, I mean, what is that, 10 years ago now? And there was less people going into the bank and so forth, but that's still preferred in a lot of areas. And so there's some thoughts there as far as where employees may want to be in the office for a certain amount of time, but definitely there's more remote work that is being looked after.
And so it seems like a lot of our executive leaders and business owners have a lot to think about this shift.
Yeah, I mean, there was this
model. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. There was this article this study Gartner put out, and it says that nearly 3/4 of the CFOs out there are going to expand or want to see more remote work, or expecting more remote work. And so if you can see this distribution here, this graph that they put out, it's pretty interesting. But I think it's definitely a trend here to stay and so forth. I mean, there's the advantages that we've witnessed there is there's just lower costs. There's been higher productivity in a lot of companies, especially with knowledge workers. And greater morale in that environment has been reported. People aren't commuting and they're spending that time actually working. Now there are some threats, of course. Workers are overworking themselves in some situations. They're spending too much time working, and I think that's just an adjustment period as people become more familiar with how to work remotely. And some of these challenges will go away. But part of our conversation today is to talk about some of these challenges and how they may be mitigated through the coaching process.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think that CFOs will be more interested in the talent management strategies when they realize that it's going to increase profitability and sustainability as a company.
Yeah. But one thing, there was another news piece that came out. The Barclays CEO, this is one of my previous companies I've worked with. He thinks that the days of putting 7,000 people in an office building is on coming to an end, and so it's just fearful for some of those commercial real estate people out there, filling these spaces. What do you think?
We were talking about this yesterday. That's like a little bit like a cruise ship.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Kind of environment with the heating, ventilation systems and all that is going to be I think up for discussion.
Yeah. And it's just a massive expense, you know, and for a lot of companies. And when we're thinking about being more agile and so forth with the company or businesses out there, I mean, does a large building really make sense? And
Right.
it may make sense in some areas. I mean, we just heard about JCPenney going through Chapter 11 right now, and I think I heard in the news about Amazon's thinking about picking up a lot of their spaces, you know, or repurposing their spaces not only for potential distribution centers, but also some of their new programs that they're planning on rolling out. So a lot of interesting things that are coming in.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I was just working with you, Sam, on one of our clients in New York City, and I was looking out my hotel window, taking pictures of everybody in their cubicles because I thought it was kind of fascinating. And now it's like, I'm sure that office building is pretty empty right now downtown New York City.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed in a few months.
That it has, but thankfully, I mean, as I think there was a Fed chairman that mentioned that we had a robust economy 2 months ago, and I know that things are pretty tough now with a lot of shock unemployment, but you know, recovery might not be as fast as we'd like, but it's I think that we're going to be in a robust situation. So there's a lot of optimism out there.
Yeah, that's good.
So one thing that I want to mention on all of this is just the things that we need to be aware of that are changing in the coaching environment. Now, one thing is I pull up this model. This is the TMA Agile Talent Development Model. And these are the pieces that we have to, I think, Shar, you mentioned some of this last week in our discussion.
Yeah.
You know, so looking, each of these pieces are being impacted. And how they are changed and how we drive change is going to be influenced by leadership. And that's what we're trying to show here. But one of the biggest things is, as far as we were just talking about the unemployment rate, which currently is approaching 15%, a lot of companies are shifting the way that they're doing talent acquisition and are employing a lot of gig workers right now to take up some of as a cost savings measure. I think 32% of organizations are replacing full-time workers with some sort of gig worker, as reported by Gartner surveys. So that's a little bit of a change there. But there are companies out there that are still hiring. I mean, it's not that you know, this particular situation is not hitting all companies the same. I mean, we have Amazon, Walmart, Whole Foods, Fresh Direct, Dollar Tree, all hiring, in addition to companies like TD Ameritrade and Bank of America. So there's the have and have-nots in our economy right now. And but one thing in this talent acquisition piece that's changing is that, you know, we're looking at more video type of recruiting, and those psychometric assessments are becoming even more popular now, as we're looking at digital forms of processing and finding individuals and bringing them on much faster than before.
Right, and I would say the overall talent management strategies of companies, I like this visual because all of these aspects, leaders really need to brush off that former talent management strategy, take a fresh view of how we're adapting and being more agile with talent development moving forward, and how we're coaching, onboarding, supporting our employees. Mm-hmm. So this is a good reminder of that.
I saw a Mercer piece yesterday. You know, they do so much research on this topic, and they were pointing at the fact that, you know, back in the 2008 crisis with, you know, the mortgage meltdown and all that fell out from that, they were pointing out that the CFOs were sort of the lead on the rescue, you know, and played a big role. And in this one, they're saying it's going to be the chief HR officers. It's going to be those people who are really in the HR has the driver's seat in terms of the recovery and really setting a lot of the organization up for these pieces that you're showing here, Sam, but also just, you know, automating and, getting the organization itself to really look at talent a different way.
Yeah. You're stealing my thunder there. I was getting ready to, but succession is a big piece there. No, that's a good point, and thanks for bringing that up. And we're looking at those new critical roles. I mean, we were thinking about strategic roles in the past, and so what are the new critical roles? And what's found to be the critical role right now is HR, those HR leadership, and they're looking at things strategically. How do we are thinking about our talent workforce planning of the future? How do we adjust our employee value proposition? And then even adjusting in the near term, pay and benefits, and how that's going to be impacted through all of this. So the HR leader is critical at this time.
And I would agree. And the HR leader is critical at this time. I also believe, in my own personal experience in talent management and HR, that the executive buy-in of the CEO and the CFO being at the hip and partnering strongly with this process of talent. It's not just an HR program. It has to start at the top.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
We have to have all of us on board with this, no matter if it's HR's job, it's all of our jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a big piece. I mean, we could talk for hours on these different factors and what have changed in each one of these. But the big driver of what companies are thinking about right now is that before the pandemic, we're really looking for how do we make things more efficient, more productive, and so forth. And companies have found that that was a great initiative in a stable environment. But what happened is it made their companies a little bit more fragile. As we're, right now, we need to think about how are we going to readjust our processes and our programs to not only be effective and efficient, but also resilient. So that this is nobody believes that this is going to be our final bout with these types of pandemics in the future. We need to be ready for this as a business.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So next piece here is, in a way to be more resilient, and a way to ensure that we're really leveraging our people the best is a new way to think about talent management. I mean, we're kind of splitting this up a bit. So in the past, when we thought about or we had talent management on our mind, it's easy just to go to the employee and think about roles in the company as Legos that we need to, slot people into. But now it's become more and more evident that jobs are changing on a more rapid base. We need to have more agile in jobs, and jobs aren't not necessarily made up of what what you're doing, or the processes that you're doing every day. It's more about what is required to operate in that position. What is a role, and how can we use this role in a variety of different projects, across the organization or across functional way. So looking at jobs is becoming a little bit more complex, and that's what we're really seeing some more growth and competency management. So understanding what kind of behaviors and skills and talents are necessary to do this job effectively and have it operate as an agile position in the future. And then we're looking at our talent resources out there. A lot of our talent resources are those individuals that we know that are high performers and that are currently employed or are part of our current workforce, maybe as a gig worker as well, that we can leverage in a variety of different ways. So perhaps they may be on one project focused on their particular specialty, and then they show competency for doing other types of work that are valuable across the company. Why take risk on bringing in somebody brand new when you have a known entity that you can leverage in your talent pool? So it comes to an important part of not only understanding what's necessary in the job area or what we need to do for our roles, but also understanding the talent that we can draw upon and bring those two together. And so to do that, there's tools out there now that we can assess the talents and drives of those individuals and combine those with the roles and projects to get our highest level of performance out there, and really increase and have that engaged behavior.
Right. I absolutely love this visual here that you've created here, Sam, because it's really about building that talent-centric culture, and that is bottom up and bottom down. I love the fact that we're aligning what is our business needs during this time, particularly right now, as a lot of our companies are going through business transformation and realigning their business strategies, and then what kind of people and talents and people needs that we need to align for that. I think is so crucial. And it's also about integration of a new team and an integration of new team around skill sets and competencies that will, build nicely into our new culture and environment, particularly right now during this time of recovery.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that brings to the fact of how important it is to ensure that we're coaching our people effectively. And a lot of the process is still quite the same as we've heard in the past, but we're in a different environment. We need to apply it differently, and we need to adapt on how we're setting that out. So the big thing is setting expectations, making sure that we are reviewing objectives, review those objectives. The next is those regular check-ins. That's where we're removing obstacles, and then we have the real-time feedback, or the performance element of this, where we're providing development and coaching. And then finally, that project status updates, to where we're really looking at performance and moving things along. So each one of these pieces are quite important in the remote environment, and even more important. And when we're thinking about setting expectations, it's super necessary in the remote environment to be able to ensure that roles are clarified, and that we are looking at metrics and how those metrics can be achieved in each of those remote environments that we're dealing with. I mean, some, like we've mentioned before, some areas might not have good cell phone or internet coverage, or there may be some challenges in the remote workplace where we need to develop that or develop those skill sets. The regular check-ins is making sure that employees, when they're in the workplace, they've used to having IT there to help support them. Now people are doing a lot of this on their own. They need to there's a little bit more heavy lifting here and there until we get in understanding this new environment better. So understand that enablement is super important right now. And then feedback and development. So we need to continue with that development and coaching. It's more important than ever to be able to ensure that we're giving appropriate feedback and recognition to our employees, so that they know that they're valued when in a time where they may feel a little disconnected in this adjustment period.
So what is your thoughts about that, Sam? So knowing that the dynamics and the acute awareness of the changes as a leader, really thinking about all of these changes around performance management, I mean, how do you think this will affect the traditional mindset of performance management, performance evaluations?
Well, I think this is forcing a lot of change. I mean, right now is when we've had these old structures in place where the annual performance review and using performance ratings and so forth, and those can still be appropriate tools for some companies, but what's happening now is managers are going through a shock. They have to give feedback. They have to communicate, or they will fail, and their employees or their coworkers will fail. So it's being forced upon them, and it's going to make a better managers for the future. So I think that this is a great shock for our management competencies out there. But HR as a whole, we need to give them support and develop them so that they can be successful. A lot of managers are right now, they're not equipped for this type of environment. So we need to make sure that they get the appropriate training and coaching to ensure that they're ramped up. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a lot of our HR leaders have a strong pressure. I've seen some articles about some of our HR executives that are dealing with the stress and the pressure and the need to really transform cultural strategies and really fostering that strong collaborative cohesion in the organization right now. And so many of our HR leaders are looking for newer, different strategies in order to do that.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think, one thing I wanted to just throw in here to the mix, Sam, and especially I think to this point that you're just making here, is the role in this of the customer itself, because so much of the time the feedback ends up becoming something that is very, internal and insular between the employee and the manager. But how many of us have been on, I don't know if any of you have been on calls like this, where you can tell that the person's cell phone is, like you were just saying, really poor quality, and they're a customer service agent and you're barely able to hear them, or they're cutting out or whatever, because they're obviously working in a, place where they don't have good cell coverage. And, these kind of that's just a simple example of a lot of the things where the customer experience also has to kind of be plugged into this, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that feedback all around is important, and that's what we've been talking about for years. With and as we're gaining more traction towards the 360 feedback method, it's not just it's not just internal. It's the customer and those society that we're working with and we're helping develop. They're part of our customer base, and it's also our families, our relatives, and that we're interacting with. I mean, especially now very closely in an at-home environment, but we realize now that family and keeping that healthy work-life balance. If it's not healthy, it'll bleed into the business. So, I mean, we really are thinking this is really a time of work-life integration. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know that we talked about a lot of things here, but there's a lot more to talk about. So I want to make sure we give Lisa her time, but we'll go through this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Thank you, Sam. These are very insightful as we are going through these times of transition and change. I think changing the paradigm and the mindset of how we're operating business around coaching and developing our talent is so crucial. Mm-hmm. So at this point, that was an engaging dialogue. Thank you so much. So at this point, we'd like to turn the reins over and discuss leading disruptive change from chaos to growth with Lisa. And I think, Sam, you'd like to participate in that discussion.
Oh, absolutely. It's always great to join Lisa in discussions.
We do a lot of that. Yeah.
So tell us, Lisa, what's the leading in disruptive change?
Yeah. So I'm going to broaden the lens a bit wider from what you were just talking about, kind of where you were drilling really into the HR's role and the whole way in which that needs to shift and to looking at talent very differently and looking through different creative lenses around that. I'm going to broaden the lens a bit. Most of my work has been over the last 22 years doing culture change, has been when organizations are going through massive disruption. And I, in my keynotes, have been studying this phenomenon in the societal level now for about 4 years. And so I want to start with just talking a little bit about what chaos actually is. So it's defined as a state of utter confusion or disorder. That's straight out of the dictionary.com. And it is that in one sense. It does create in the human mind quite a bit of confusion or disorder. But and that is often seen as a bad thing, right? That chaos is bad. But in science, it is actually a precursor to evolution. When a system input varies slightly, for example, it can cause disproportionate effects on the downstream results. Some of you know that as the butterfly effect. Whether that is a scientific reality or not is still up for debate, but the butterfly's wings flapping in Africa causes a tornado in Texas, that kind of thing. But what we're seeing with COVID is that it's a microvariance in a microorganism in the human community. It's clearly causing a disproportionate impact. And so chaos always precedes the ability to adapt, whether in small or large ways. And I just want to set the tone for that when we're talking about chaos to growth, really accepting that the chaos is the precursor because it causes us to wake up. right? And
Yeah.
go, we need to do things very, very differently.
Yeah, I
So
was talking about Legos just a minute ago, and when you think about if you're wanting to build something new, you first have to dump all your Lego box out on the floor and into a piece of chaos to be able to design something new. So, right, it's a start to a lot of things.
yes, absolutely. And seeing it as a negative thing is understandable given the amount of, that is at stake in terms of our lifestyle, in terms of our economy. But I think it's important to understand that it's not just a semantics thing to call it an opportunity. It is literally an opportunity, for us to take a look at reinventing. And I think that's a very powerful thing to be doing. So chaos is inevitable before growth. What makes adapting easier? I put this quote in here that you can read. I'm not gonna read this one out loud, but I want to talk a little bit about the digital transformation is already accelerating in every industry. And you're seeing leading industries, obviously technology, you're seeing lagging industries, which some of the more capital intensive industries are having a harder time, but digital transformation is the ability of leaders to reinvent every part of their business around technology and automation. And so you were already seeing this be a huge challenge. You're already seeing that leaders are self-reporting that the biggest challenge to it is the culture and the mindsets and the behaviors that have been embedded around work. For example, something as simple as the way we measure your effectiveness at work is, do you show up in the building for 8 hours a day? And that's just been massively unplugged, right? And now we're having to forced to look at brand new ways of measuring. So the COVID era has accelerated those disruptive forces that are already underway. And it really, truly is not about coming up with a buttoned up crisis plan and following it. That's what this McKinsey point is really making. You have to have a mindset of moment to moment deeper listening and responding and forming networks of teams, etc. So before we go into the 3 keys to leading, I want to talk about these major forces of disruptive change that are unfolding in our society. This is huge. And there is, as I said, I'm going to just roll through these very briefly and define them. But when you think about the massive collective impact of all of this, you begin to understand the chaos that we are undertaking is a huge, huge opportunity for change. The internet was arrived in 1983, the World Wide Web in 1990. So we are approximately 30 years into this revolution, the digital revolution. Obviously catalyzed change in everything about how we meet, communicate, work, play, educate, socialize, travel, even sleep, right? Maybe you have your Fitbit on. Globalization. So in one generation, if you think back to your grandparents and great-grandparents, we become a truly global society and freer movement of people, goods, services across the entire world. So we are no longer, even if we want to pretend that our borders are closed, we are no longer operating as a country-by-country society. Psychological contract of work, the M&A craze in the 1980s, it's one of the sort of big things that toppled the idea of lifetime employment and the pension, sort of mass downsizing, the death of the pension, and taught an entire generation, that's millennials, who my generation, the boomers, raised, to own their time and career. There's no more loyalty. Work will never be the same as a result of that. Demographic diversity and societal values, you now have 4 generations in the workplace. That's never been the case before, all with different core values, where you have boomers are really, as an example, more oriented around achievement, money, accomplishment, status. You're seeing the millennials and the younger generations much more oriented around freedom, flexibility, and meaning. That's not news to you, but it's a huge, huge tension and conflict that it's creating within the workplace around the mindsets that we talked about earlier, because frankly, the older generations are still holding more power. So they're still the ones saying, hey, this is how it has to be done. Business extinction. Since 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 went bankrupt or ceased to exist. Before COVID, experts predicted there'd be at least another 40% churn by 2025. Likely we'll see that accelerate. Every size sector of company is going to be undergoing this. And then of course, digital transformation, the increasing mandate to digitize systems and processes and products to be technology and automation centric. And that reduces cost, increases the customer experience, but it also is a huge opportunity for HR to step back from all of the day-to-day churning around of, you know, the busy work that they're doing, and have a seat at the table, as Erin was pointing out in the chat, to take a more strategic role in reshaping how do we balance economics with empathy toward our people. Do not doubt this is a time to reinvent your workplace. It is.
Right. Well, one thing that, as you're talking here, I was thinking back of other disruptive changes that we've had in history, Great Depression, you know, the technology bust, and so forth. And each one of these particular events really changed the demographic beliefs. So, for instance, right now we hear that we have certain connotations of what boomers and Gen X and millennials are like, but now that they've experienced this disruptive change of COVID-19, we can expect some new behaviors arise as a result of this that we can only imagine might come out. So I think that we need to be ready for that.
Yeah, the ones that we may not even have in mind right now, you know,
right,
or have predicted, you know. But if you are really truly operating with this idea that your customer, you know, Maritza was pointing this out, do we need to change just how our customer expectations, and talking more about the human experience across all of the different stakeholders, you know, and really showing empathy. I think that when you do that, when you stop having the mindset that people are just a full-time equivalent or a human capital, or, you know, all these words that we use to describe people in non-human ways, what could happen? Because that creativity is now, the door is open for it, where I think that in the workplace has really not been universally open.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to describe 3 growth factors that I have, as I said, been doing disruptive change in organizations for a long, long time. And I studied a lot about this. And so one of them is to redefine the employee value proposition. So you saw Sam earlier talk quite a bit about this topic, but really, even like in the webinar yesterday with Mercer that I was listening to, how they had done research late 2019 saying that the biggest theme and concern for HR leaders and truly company leaders was the employee experience. It's like the top thing that everybody is now starting to really get it and pay attention to it. And in doing so, you have to align the employee value proposition with that. And this is what the best companies are doing. They had talked about during the 2008 crisis, companies that did that have focused on the employee experience were 3 times more quick to recover their performance. So really kind of moving toward defining these. I mean, if it's true that millennials and the younger ones below them that were born starting around 1996, so they're just coming, Gen Z's just coming into the workforce. If it's true that they are going to be 75% of the workforce by 2025, that's the expert prediction, these values have to be in play. Flexibility, now we're seeing it already, right? Family, work, life, convergence, it's all just happened in the last 2 months. Now you're homeschooling your kids, you're juggling the whole family life right there while you're trying to work. Trust, I love Netflix's new book on freedom and responsibility. I have not read the whole book, but it's a really powerful sort of exposure of what it means to actually build trust into your culture, not just give it, but to actually build a cycle of two-way trust. And career growth, so that what Sam was just talking about this feedback cycles and the performance management process has to be oriented around very different ways of growing people, whether it's sideways, up, down, all the different creative ways in which we can start to deploy people. And what's my last point, Sam?
Reverse the pyramid.
Oh, okay. It's not showing up on the screen.
Sorry, let me see if there it goes.
There we go. Okay, so this is really about this is the #1 complaint of millennials is politics. They hate it. So what we're talking about here is not just a mindset shift, but literally reversing the pyramid. I've seen very progressive companies, when they think about a pyramid, you think about employees on the bottom, mid-level managers, and executives on the top, and just flipping it so that you really have this very practical way of looking at leaders are there to support the employees of the company, who really are your frontline people, are the people who have the direct connection with the external world and who are going to create the customer experience. I had Sam put this graphic back up here about the remote work, because I think this really captures all of what we're talking about here as an example of the disconnect that we're seeing with these employee value proposition ideas I'm putting forth. You know, that statistic is the employee view in terms of what they want about remote work, right? About 48% of them want to stay with it. When you ask managers, 55% of them say, we won't change our remote. It's the same survey with Gallup. We will not actually be changing our remote policy as a result of COVID-19. And to me, that is part of this disconnect. You know, it's like, I don't know if you want to comment about that, Sam, but that just got my attention for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely is understanding the difference. I mean, there's a lot of things that that companies need to do to ensure that they can be more flexible to the employees' needs. I mean, right now, managers and leaders and business owners are thinking about, well, I need to do certain things to survive, you know, and so they are thinking about the business context. But the thing that we need to keep in mind is for the future, we need to think about the choices that we're making as a business, because how is that going to impact our employees and the trust that they have in our company? If we violate that trust, it's going to be very difficult to find the right talent to work for you in the future. So more now than ever, we're more intertwined with our customer and our coworkers and how successful our business is. And so one thing that I also want to, when talking about trust and flexibility, it's so important. And Lisa mentioned earlier that companies that had a strong employee value proposition are recovering faster, or maybe not even as impacted as much. And that's the truth for a lot of how they operate internally. For instance, I'm an expert in compensation and rewards. And my companies that have embraced a variable pay program and recognition programs that are strong in their companies, they can use that as a buffer in these difficult times. But if you're paying 100% fixed pay and you're faced with a downturn in the economy or a shock in the market, I mean, there's not a whole lot of places to run if you have that kind of rewards profile. So it's important for us to think about, how can we make our companies better? How can we make them more agile to survive these turns of events?
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I want to just put forth is this idea that's been in my mind about what you're saying, Sam, on this, that let's put back up with those bullet points, just not the point. I wanted to just say that I think that if you look at a family system, you know, which is a microcosm of an organizational system, and you have a disconnect in the core values between the parents and the teenagers, what happens, right? You see this massive amount of conflict, and that diffuses energy from the kind of initiatives that leaders you know, are trying to get done. And I want to just point out, I think that's a lot of what's been happening in the workplaces around this, you know, tension between boomers and millennials in particular is more the highest profile conversation. But it is, I think, a really important time for us all to look in the mirror around what can we do to create more alignment with these ideas, because they are taking hold, whether we like it or not, and not just sort of diss the teenagers for rebelling, but really look at through a different kind of lens that some of what you're talking about there, Sam. Next slide. Yeah, Aaron, I just want to call this comment out. Aaron says, I've heard several leaders recently say things to the tune of, well, our employees can't go anywhere right now, which to me is a way to invalidate their needs and the importance of continued growth and development in human capital. Shame on them. I agree with that. That comment is exactly what I was just pointing to, or meant to, if it didn't seem connected in your mind there, Aaron. Thank you. So growth factor number 2, one of the things that you may have already thought of is that the military has been doing crisis management for thousands of years, right? That's pretty much a lot of how they operate. and they have very, very mature systems in terms of leadership, in terms of systems and processes by how they manage in a crisis. And I wanted to just pull these 3 things out for you to consider that if your company isn't already doing these are really good practices. So one is, what is an overarching goal that you want to have? I just made up a few examples. Healthcare might be treat patients while keeping our employees safe. So that's our goal right now. That is our mission. Transportation, ensure operational focus that protects customer and employee health. Manufacturing, adapt to new requirements and accelerate automation of our business. So name a goal that is overarching right now for this period of your business that may be a little bit different than the vision, maybe a little bit different than the goals you had at the beginning of 2020. And what military organizations do is activities that don't support the main goal should be paused to preserve resources. So there should be not just a hunkering down around the people side, but also around your programs. Number 2, so the resilience topic is a huge one in just business in general today, but you need to be thinking about quicker decisions to cut losses around programs, and so that you can support those critical objectives. And a higher capacity for assessing and managing risks and resources on those achievable goals. So for example, commercial real estate leases for office space and retail, reducing product line complexity in a manufacturing line, embedding safety practices to ensure both essential and optional workers are comfortable coming to work. These are really, that resilience is, to me, a function of deeper listening on the part of leaders, and the degree to which they're listening is the degree to which they and the organization can move with greater resilience rather than resistance to the changes that are happening. And to stir things up with surprise and innovation, this was kind of a surprising bit I read about this military model, that break a few rules to expand your capacity to respond quickly to change. Sponsor innovation sessions that focus on one core outcome. Put employee fingerprints on the change. Always make sure that you're sponsoring those fingerprints on your employees' part. Cross-functional, multi-level forums to reinvent specific aspects of the customer experience, product mix, and rejuvenate, the energy around your business once there's a reopening. Mm-hmm. So those are a few factors on growth factor number 2, which is model what works with the military. And growth factor number 3 is to rethink leadership for the long term. So this is one, and I want Sam to weigh in on this, and Shar, all of you, so digital transformation savvy is no longer optional. That was, I said, accelerating before COVID. All aspects of the business become automated and integrated. You free people up for more creative thinking to exploit new opportunities. Every mid to top level leader has to understand, and this is not my wisdom, this is all the experts out there at the McKinsey, Deloitte, Mercer level, have to understand how digitizing aspects of their operations interfaces with the rest of the organization. So as Sam pointed out, and we were talking earlier, Mercer says HR will need to lead this journey. That is, the automating of systems in the business will allow HR to create stronger programs for developing leaders who can coach and stimulate creativity among teams. So teamwork is the center point of growth, and we have to have HR at the center of really understanding how to set that up in a much more robust way. But automating a lot of their back office operations is going to be a key to that. Culture of change. There's no longer change as an event. Change is a capability in companies today. So when you've got rapidly accelerating transformation in the next decade, leaders have to be able to tolerate failure and quickly test new ideas and be customer centric. So they've got to be developed to manage change as a capability, not as an event. Think about Governor Andrew Cuomo's, whether you like him or not, his crisis management techniques were pretty amazing, actually. Obtain data, pivot, communicate daily. So that was and is what is happening there in New York at the epicenter of the crisis here in the US. The ability to build a culture that can generate and quickly test new ideas, experiment with and tolerate failure while being customer centric. These are capabilities of the modern organization that will no longer be optional. And serving multiple stakeholders over short-term profit. So either or, thinking profit or employee well-being, cut costs or stimulate growth. This is outdated thinking for tomorrow's leaders. We've got to have that both and mindset, because executives today are forced to make decisions primarily on the bottom line. It's the quarterly profit cycle, right? Tomorrow's leaders need to go upstream and consider multiple stakeholders in their decisions, and that includes the loyalty of customers and employees. So those are some really big tips. And I use all of these in the work that I do. I was, wanting to get some of the points made right. So I was reading off my script, but I feel like these are all things that I do in the culture work, the culture change work that I do. They all have to show up. It's complex. It's a complex time, but it's really important if you want to restore growth that you're not just looking at this through a, oh, this too shall pass lens. When things will get back to normal, you got to rethink it all. It's just the 52 pickup. It's
yeah,
right.
no, great points. I mean, you were talking about the culture of change, and I think that this, the one positive thing that this virus environment is bringing is this major disruption, which is going to make us stronger companies out of this. I think companies are going to force to become light and agile so they can pivot, like you mentioned, quickly.
Yes.
And that's going to be better for their customers and products and employees as a whole, as we learn to be more dynamic in that environment.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent points. I also would say,
and that I was just going to say to that point about the, being light means fewer employees. But I think you're going to see more of that freelance and gig economy take hold, where people can have, I can parse myself out for different projects. And already you're seeing that younger generation be more what they want anyway. So it's kind of an interesting time on that front. Yeah,
I think that's something like 30% of the workforce now. I mean, it's quite extensive. Yeah. So I think things are going to improve there.
Sorry, Shar.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, my point is HR leaders and relative people leaders, our job is to really connect the dots in the organization. So when you talk about digital transformation, you have talent in your companies that actually can help with that. It's about connecting those dots to really drive those talents, get the resources and the support they need with the talent already existing. That's just my thought on that. But and then the last thing I was going to say is we've had some great chat going on. Maritza talked about the aspect of change relative to our customers. And, we really need to not only think about our current internal talent, but how our customers are aligning to the changes. And then Brian and I think it's Sheila talked about the generational impact. And believe it or not, Generation Z is like, what, 24 years old now? So that age is
I know, because my son is born in 96 and he'll be 24 this year. He's 20, and that's like,
yeah, well, guess what?
Younger to me, don't they?
I think we talk a lot about
when I was 24, I was 6 years into my career, so.
Right, we talk a lot about the millennials, but guess what? There's another generation right there already in the workforce. And so anyway, and then also just talking about things like, how do we become a different employer providing affordable health care? I think Les Simpson talked about that as well. So thank you. Anything else to add, Lisa, Sam, on your discussion?
Well, before we move to that next one, just go back, because I think I wanted to mention what this offer is. For those of you who are curious about this tool that we've been talking about, any of you are welcome to do it. I love the whole top-down, bottom-up approach to talent. It's a really cool tool, and we're just offering to anybody on this webinar for free. So just email me, lisa@compteam.net, and we'll get you set up to take the tool and give you a free debrief on that. So hopefully some of you will take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Yeah, such a great benefit, I have to say. So take advantage of that if you can. So now I'd like to move into our next segment, and I have to tell you, I love Lorna Carlson. We've been friends for several years now. She is a colleague in the HR space as well as a realtor, and she's also a recruiter. So she has got some major insight. So hi, Lorna. You and I are going to talk about re-recruiting your talent during time of epidemic recovery, because a lot of us have had to downsize, lay off, make changes in our staffing models, but now we need to re-recruit. So welcome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shar. And I want to say thank you to Sam and Shar for inviting me and allowing me to have the opportunity to share my insights and some of the information that I gathered. I just wanted to quickly share a quote by Peter Drucker, and I think a lot of people have heard of him. Effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is defined by results, not attributes. And I think that's what you guys have been talking about, you know, the results. And sometimes as leaders, we have to make those tough decisions for the betterment of the employees and long-term possibilities. So with that, I have a lot of writing here. However, I'm just going to briefly go over some of the things, and hopefully we'll have some conversation that way. One of the things that stands out to me is onboarding is about bonding and managing emotions day to day. And when you're dealing with working remotely, it does create a challenge. And we are talking about a new workforce. We're changing from a on-site workforce where we did work in the cubicles to working at home. And of course, that is a culture shock, as I think I heard Lisa talk about. It is really a culture shock. And for a couple different reasons. People may not have their offices set up at home. So that's something that they have to readjust. And then, of course, the schedules and so forth. So, yeah, we need to be kind in that way to allow the leaders and the employees to make those adjustments. And I'm going to move.
Well, and I also would say that during this time of re-recruiting, I think it's also an opportunity to really look at our diversity of our workforce during this time and really look at the type of talent that we have in a more of a global diverse workforce.
I agree. I agree. And I think Time Magazine, I have it here, said that the world's largest work from home experiment is teaching leaders who weren't on board with offsite work that they can be productive. It's just taking us time. And with that, like you're talking about, Shar, is being diverse, allowing diversity to rise up to the challenge.
Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of our diverse remote work environments for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But we do need to think about a very different type of onboarding or recruiting process with this new workforce, with all the changes as Lisa was talking about.
Sure. And onboarding has been digitalized, as I think somebody had mentioned, for some time now. Not all companies have it 100% digitally, but for the most part, there's much digitalization within the onboarding process. I think what we're really going to have to focus in on, because we're taking it off-site now, is that connection, making that human connection. And Gallup research finds that frequent conversations yield the biggest improvements in engagement. Remote workers are 3 times more likely to be engaged if they get that feedback from their manager. So the manager now is going to have a little bit of a different role, and it might take some time to adjust to that role. If you're a manager who is managing 3 to 5 or more people, you're going to have to find that time, and whether it be a Zoom or one-on-ones, to meet with your employees to make sure that everybody is on the same page, so to speak, and they understand what their roles are within the team.
Wouldn't you think, Lorna, just to interject here, that employees want coaches, not bosses?
I agree. I believe that from my own personal experience, and then also managing several businesses and people, that what we want is we want a coach. We don't need a boss. Most people are, I would say, fairly in tune and educated to what's going on in the world, and they're looking for somebody to help guide their career, so to speak. So it is important, and getting back to what Lisa was talking about, company culture. It goes back to the company culture. Hiring the right manager, and hiring the manager that prefers to coach over manage.
Right. I mean, I found in some of my experience, we have some leaders that are literally chasing employees away. And I would say, even in this time, some of those behaviors of not coaching and mentoring and supporting are literally chasing our crucial staff away, because a lot of people are going to change their careers during this time.
I would agree.
So one thing I'd add is I think that the role of the manager in the past 30 years has been underutilized, or it's almost like a practitioner that has to lead people in some sort of way. Now the role of manager is going to be super important. I mean, and actually helping guide careers, making sure there's effective communication, and so recruiting is going to be extremely important to make sure that we're getting those types of talents in the organization to be successful in the future.
Sure. And I just wanted to add in there, talking about adding to what you were saying, Sam, it's almost like we're going from the industrial age thinking, and we're being forced into the new modern age knowledge worker workforce. And I think that's what's happened with the COVID. So with that, mindsets are going to have to be successful, readjust. And, it can't, in my perspective, be all about profit. And it can't be all about how much did this hire cost me? Because in the end, it may cost you less if you hire the right person and can coach that person into that particular position, if that even makes sense.
Yeah, Lisa?
Well, I was just going to say that, this is a couple things to Lorna's point here, that, COVID is forcing the issue, but as I had mentioned before, we are 30 years into the digital revolution, and we're still operating with the same paradigm that we had in the industrial revolution of work and workers and the employee manager relationship. So I think you're absolutely right. COVID has just upset the apple cart on that one, in a lot of ways. One thing that before we move ahead, you were talking a lot about bringing people on and onboarding. Maritza's asking a question: how do you help someone hired as a gig worker feel immersed with the business and part of it? Do you have any thoughts on that front? Because that's going to be a big theme moving forward, right?
Sure. Well, I've been a gig worker, a contractor at many positions that I've held. And I believe, from my perspective, is you don't treat the gig worker as a gig worker. You treat that person as they were an employee, because they are, in fact,
they're dedicating their energy to you.
Pardon me?
They're dedicating their energy to you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really important. And again, it goes back to the mindset and to the management, if we want to call them manage. I don't even know if the term manager would even be appropriate anymore, that now that we're talking about it. Should we kind of take that word manager out and use a different verb to describe what that person does? They're a coach, we want them to be a coach. So I think it's really important that as a gig worker, that the higher up, the manager, coach, CEO, CFO, whoever it may be, is treat that person as if they are a true employee of their company. I've been to companies myself where I have felt like an outcast, literally, sitting in a cubicle by myself doing my job. And then I've been on the other side where I felt very welcome. And those are the companies that actually I've had much more success with. So I think we need to take that verb out of it the gig worker, and treat that person as if they are a true employee, because they are. Like you said, Lisa, they're giving their time and effort to that company.
Somebody's dogs agree.
Yeah, my dog's out there. They're excited.
This is part of our new integrated life.
Yeah, you know, and you have to expect that disruption is going to happen. And what do you do with that disruption? Well, you might have to pause momentarily, adjust, and then you move forward. So, and I'm ready for the next slide.
So yeah, setting expectations for essential employees.
Yeah, so setting expectations is an essential keystone to employee success. And I wanted to read from the bottom first. It says here, only 26% of employees strongly agree that their manager is good at helping them set priorities, and 6 in 10 employees know what is expected of them. Now, isn't that interesting? And it goes back to what we were talking about.
I'll just tell you, from back in my younger days as an HR person, I would do new hire orientations.
Mm-hmm.
And every other week, I mean, we'd have like, I was working in a huge healthcare system, so at times we'd have 50 people in the room. And I would ask them to raise their hand. Has anybody seen the job description? And only a few would raise their hand. Of our new hires, didn't even know the basic expectations of their job when they got hired into the job. So yes, and it was something I could not quite convey to our management team. You got to be very clear about expectations from before you hire them in the organization. So.
Well, I agree. It starts with the job description, and obviously before you even post the job.
Right.
And that's why I think it's really important for department managers and HR representatives, a recruiter or the manager and the recruiter, all people involved, to sit down and have that honest discussion and review the job description. What is it that we're really looking for? And then even as that manager is going through the hiring process, and my experience has shown me, so we interview a couple people, and the manager says, well, you know, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure that that's the person. And what we need to do then is, that's when you sit down with the department manager and the recruiter and quite possibly the HR manager, and say, okay, what do we need to readjust? What needs to be adjusted, whether it be on the job description? Do we need to take something away, or do we need to add something? Because I think it's really important when an employee or a prospective candidate applies for a job, that they know what they're applying for. So
Right.
They know what's expected. And again, that starts from the very beginning, like you said, Shar.
Well, I will tell you, I just noticed Lisa made a comment here. She said it's about like a fluid job description, particularly in this time of our employees, you know, with the PPP, you know, the you know, different types of masks and expectations of how we're working with our customers. As a business owner, I'm dealing with this right now. How do you keep social distancing? What is your role going to be now? Maybe you're working in more of a virtual space around a very different thing. And so yeah, that job description is going to need to be looked at, I would think, and modified perhaps.
Well, I think it should be looked at and reviewed. I would even say, so you hire somebody for the job and they come aboard, and as they're being onboarded and trained into, first of all, the company culture and their position, maybe within 60 to 90 days, you may even want to review the job description at that point.
Yep. Well, and we've been hearing that onboarding process takes at least 90 days. I would actually argue it takes longer than that. So it's that whole journey of before they're hired, having an accurate job description, when they're hired. Again, review the basics of what their job entails and how you're going to coach and mentor their success, and also to really incorporate that new hire into the culture, and that they feel that they belong, that there's some type of meaningful relationship with the new hire and the community. So all of these things need to be critically looked at right now.
I would agree. I would agree. What we're experiencing, obviously, is a shock to everyone in and out of the workforce. And we need to be cognizant of that fact. So when we're hiring people, we need to put the human touch back, the human compassion into our hiring processes. And everybody wants to feel like they're a part of. So it's so essential. Even with off-site remote employees, there's ways that we can come together and build that camaraderie. You know, Lisa was mentioning the military, and I have served time in the military myself. And the camaraderie that the military experiences is astounding. So we really need to embrace the employee, the new employee, as a part of our family, not just somebody who's going to get the job done. And here it goes to that with the common challenges of remote work, lack of face-to-face supervision. Both managers and their employees often express concerns about that lack of face-to-face. And again, I'll go back to, that's why I believe as an employee and an employer that meeting, whether it be on Zoom, via the phone, FaceTime, even just verbally over the phone is so important. And my personal opinion, I would say for a new employee that you're onboarding at least 3 times a week. And it can be a short call. It can be 10 minutes. It doesn't even have to be necessarily about the job. It can be about that person. And it should be about that person. How's your day going? Are you having any frustrations? Are you experiencing anything that I can help you with? And I do want to say this too, with this remote work experience that we're all getting accustomed to, this is where I believe that the coach or the manager can, just like a social worker, you go out and do a home meeting. You know, as if we can meet face to face, and even if we have a mask on or whatever the case may be, you know, because there's going to be a time when hopefully we won't have to be socially distanced, that person takes the opportunity to go visit their employee at the remote work location. Right. I think it's very important.
Yes, and I'm thinking about that onboarding experience, and you talk about, I call it hardwiring some onboarding steps. I mean, I think that when somebody joins an organization, they go through the 4 seasons, as I call it.
Yeah.
So for example, an HR person, there's different things that happen at different points of the year, which is going to require different capabilities and competencies and skill sets that are going to be different every season of the year. So it really needs to be an ongoing onboarding process.
It does. It does. And to what you were saying, Shar, I know some people have said 3 months for onboarding. However, I would say, in my perspective, onboarding is ongoing, and at least for the first year, not just the first 3 months. And lack of access to information. For newly remote workers are often surprised by the added time and effort needed to locate information. And I know that's been my experience, because you're trying to organize your workspace. And then of course, creating, you know, like you hear my dogs. You know, it's trying to stay centered in your job and not let outside distractions get you distracted from your position that is helping bring the income into your home so you can have that home. Research on emotional intelligence and emotional contagion tells us that employees look to their managers about how to react. So I love how you reacted when my dogs were barking. You didn't say, oh, well, what is that? Or have a grimace on your face. You weren't doing that.
Well, I've got a couple dogs right here.
Yeah, it's life. So, you know,
I was surprised they didn't start barking.
Managers and mentors that are authentic and they understand life. They understand life happens, especially now with COVID, because we don't know what people are going through. Even though somebody is a new employee, we don't know that maybe their mom, their brother, their sister has been affected by the COVID, and they may be experiencing other things. You know, just because we interviewed them, you know, everything doesn't come out in the interview. So we really need to be very cognizant of that fact. And I think that's the teacher in me coming out, because a teacher needs to, you know, we need to be aware of what's going on in our employees' families as well, to a certain extent. And this is not necessarily any different from what we were talking about, but managers who hire based on employee talents and communicate the expectations and individualize them will see positive outcomes. Where managers who don't practice that good remote management will most likely conclude that remote management doesn't work. So my question to the panel and to our guests out there is, how do we then help managers practice good remote management? How do we do that? And I believe it starts again with the job description and the expectations that you set for the manager, if that's the word, the verb that you're using, the noun that you're using. It starts then.
Yeah, I love a book that that Lisa recommended. It's called The Everyone Culture. And, you know, that we need to really, particularly right now with the fact that our essential workers are so much focus on the essential worker. But really, as we get back to restarting, reopening, everybody is essential if we're reopening. Or otherwise, why would they be rehired or reemployed or as an employee? Everyone matters.
Yeah.
So that's I love that message.
Yeah, I like that too. Everyone does matter.
So leaders need to, all right, I would hope that a leader really acknowledges the coaching, the mentoring, the helping people with their competencies, their skill sets, their capabilities, and aligning it back to the expectations and the goals of the company as well as the employee. Now is more than ever the time to really analyze that, particularly for the next several weeks before things start opening up again.
Yeah. And I would agree with what Lorna said. How do we help managers? So it's the biggest thing that we need to realize is that, you know, managers are part of our workforce too. They are our employees. They need guidance and development and coaching. And we need to enable them for success with the appropriate feedback and oversight and guidance that HR and leadership can provide. And so like we mentioned earlier, there's just going through a simple set of what is expected from them, and, you know, setting expectations, you know, making sure that they are prioritizing and having that regular communication with the workforce. I don't know how many times that I've gone into an organization and the managers talk to me and say, well, are you having your regular one-on-ones? He goes, oh, we're just too busy right now to have those, but we're going to pick those up. It's like on right now is when you need them more than ever. when you're busy and you need to communicate, you need to delegate, you need to, you collaborate to ensure that you're getting through this tough time to where you can get back to normal. So those one-on-ones should never be taken away. Also, the other thing is making sure that you're tracking project status updates. I mean, I didn't really spend time on this yellow arrow too much in my discussion, but it's really important that leadership not micromanage. And so, and not feel that we're or our employees feeling that they're being micromanaged. And this happens when leadership is reaching out and they're going, well, did you do this? Or have a meeting every day when every day is not necessary. Or did this get done? Did that get done? We have modern systems to help us with that nowadays. Project management systems, Slack, all these things that we can touch base quickly without giving our employee the feeling that we're looking down at them in the microscope. So we need to have shared accountability here.
Absolutely. So fantastic. So we're about 9 minutes in. Any follow-up dialogue, Lorna, that you wanted to mention before we conclude your segment?
Sure. Yeah. I would really like to offer anybody here today that is listening and curious, and I'm looking at the comments here in the chat. Wonderful comments. It looks like we have a lot of people very interested. Sam has the TMA products available, and I personally believe in them, agree with them as a recruiter and one who I like to know about myself as well. So if anybody's interested in receiving a free gift, please feel free to reach out to Sam, Lisa, or Shar for some more information on the TMA opportunities, the tools that they have, and let us know what you think about that.
Yeah, thanks, Lorna, for bringing that up. That's just a neat opportunity to take the assessment. The TMA assessment takes about, 20 minutes of your focused attention. And once you take that assessment, you'll be given access to a platform that you can have for your own personal use or for your job search or to review with your manager or whatever for about a year, I think. And so it's kind of a neat thing, and it's you can see how you could leverage that. If you're a leader, you could see how you can leverage that with your workforce and help with coaching and development and communication.
So thank you so much, team. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Lisa and Sam. That this is definitely a nice gift. But before we wrap up with some further discussion to round out the end of our session today, I just want to go over some housekeeping aspects as we're wrapping up today's People Strategy Forum in the time of recovery. So thank you so much, speakers. That was great. So if you felt that there were some questions, commentary, that you'd like a further dialogue with either one of us, please connect with us. And also we'll look at all of our chats and Q&As, and we will work to reach out to you as well. And also just to let you know that this webinar is recorded. That's what I absolutely love, is that comp team and Sam and his team have taken all of our recordings. I think this is now number 8 or 9 now with our HR forums and people strategy forums. You'll find that all of them are amazing, and many of them have some useful gifts and resources and tools from many of our pair speakers. And we have an outstanding group of future speakers that will be returning or new speakers that are coming up in the next several months. So every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And then we just encourage you to share this. This is free. It's a resource to you. It's a resource to your people leaders. It's a resource to other business leaders. So please share this information. You're going to notice we constantly post this information ongoing. And we'd love to hear from you moving forward and being part of our people strategy team. So at this point, I'd like to open up for some interactive dialogue. in the remaining minutes. And we may go over the end of the hour, half hour here, just because there may be some discussions. So hang on if you'd like.
And one thing that I'd like to add is that I know that there's a lot of great knowledge out there, especially in the participants that are out there, that things that they may want to share, experiences in their particular organization. And we would like to invite that discussion here in this forum. And also, if you're interested in speaking and being part of this forum, let us know, because we can, invite you in, and you can share your experiences with the rest of our environment here. So anyway, please let us know. And then I also, right now, if anybody would like to just be brought on to the discussion, if they have a few things to say or share, I can bring you in as a panelist right now. So just raise your hand, and I can make that happen.
Pam has the power.
I have the
power. While we're waiting for everybody to raise their hand, I think this was actually kind of a really cool thing that that was happening in the chat, where Aaron was saying, I'm trying to get to the specific comment about how it has been being remote right now has taught us that we have to be more inclusive, actually, and make greater efforts to connect with half our staff who've always worked remotely, right? So there's this kind of recognition, I think, happening. I think she's saying, I think it's important to validate, based on our recent experience, the difficulty and barriers that it does create. And I wish we could see everyone face to face all the time. So I really wanted to call that comment out, because I think we've just all sort of gone, oh, remote work, it's a reality now and everybody's fine. But the challenges are huge around sort of being at home and trying to juggle all of that. So I just wanted to call that comment out. And, there's also been somebody, I think it was Summit, this is really funny, says, I think managers who don't practice good remote management will probably end up like the dinosaurs, without any cool movies being made about them, or their DNA being extracted and regenerated millions of years later.
I like that.
All right, give me a good laugh for the day. And I was like, yep.
Yeah.
And Summit is going to be one of our future speakers. So I want to see a dinosaur slide in there, extracting the DNA.
Summit, you're on notice.
Okay, Summit, you're gonna add that slide.
But we don't have I don't think we have any questions at this point in the chat, that so we could just wrap up a few minutes early, unless somebody wants to raise their hand now.
Well, I do think that we as leaders at all levels are in a wake-up period. And I don't think that any of us would wish the COVID-19 or anything like that, but I think as leaders, let's really look at the silver lining and take these opportunities to create those relationships and increase those relationships with our employees, and really just dust off our business planning, our talent management strategies. And this particular group here that you see, not only as us as the panelists and the speakers, we're dedicated to support you. We're here, I call it the blue ocean strategy. We're here to support. We're not here to compete. We're here to help. We're here to offer tools, resources, and information for you every week. And please continue joining us. We so appreciate everyone's participation. And every time we do these, I learn so much.
Yeah.
Every single time. And it's like, I've been in this profession, I don't even know, can't even say 25 years now. It's probably longer than that now. But I have to say, in the last several months, I've learned more than I've learned in many years. So this has been fantastic. So you guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak on your forum. And I've learned a lot just in the past few weeks being a part of this and listening in. I would love to be able to help anybody that has any questions about remote work, learning, coaching, teaching. I've had several career changes, so I've had to make adjustments along the way. And anybody that has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I love to help people. I really do.
Thanks, Lorna.
Yeah, we
Thanks,
have
everybody. I gotta run to my next meeting. Have a great week.
All right,
All
see you, Lisa.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Lisa.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and wrap up, and we look forward to seeing everyone here next week. Just find the information at compteam.net. So thank you so much.
Great.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.